Yeah, 15 and a half after 7, Mark Latham Day. If you're a Mark Latham supporter, and there are many out there, marklathamsoutsiders.com. They love Mark Latham just because he talks sense, and simple sense. You'll find him on Facebook too. Just search for Mark Latham's Outsiders. And, of course, his book is called Outsiders, I Won't Be Silenced. Great reading. He's made a point this week, Mark, that when Scott Morrison was Managing Director of Tourism Australia, he issued a marketing cry to overseas travellers. Remember, where the bloody hell are you? And Mark has taken this point and appropriated that cry in asking the Prime Minister, well, where the bloody hell are the policy changes? So changing the leadership had to happen. Now changing policy is critical. And Mark Latham's on the line. You're saying, well, where are we in policy change? And you've said, well, immigration, withdraw from the Paris Climate Change Agreement, personal income tax relief, abolish the Human Rights Commission. So it's a fertile ground for policy change, isn't it?
Well, it is, and it's much needed inside the Liberal Party because they've got fundamental policy and ideological differences. You know, they say, oh, it's a broad church. But, you know, looking at them, as I do as something of an outsider, there's no doubt that the policy differences inside the Liberal Party have magnified over the last 10 to 15 years. And, you know, you can see how their conservative and their progressive wings, you're sort of wondering how do they belong together in the same party. So I think for Scott Morrison, he's been out there doing a lot of photo opportunities, the daggy dad imagery. Perhaps he is a marketing genius. But the real thing is serious policy thinking and serious policy
And they're not difficult policy issues, are they? I mean, the notion of Paris, and you may not have heard I raised this before, Scott Morrison says, oh, well, we can easily reach the 26% emissions target. But, I mean, half of that is going to come from electricity. Is the rest going to come from agriculture by vegetation acts which lock up land and grass so that farmers can't use it? And that, of course, absorbs the carbon dioxide. So the Paris Climate Change Agreement, that's easy. You just say no. I mean, income tax, we've got flat wage increases, but the thing I keep saying, Mark, is some bloke out there, they're listening to you now, and they're saying $80,000. Well, once they get to $37,001, they're paying $1 of tax for every $3 they earn, 33%, 32.5%, and a Medicare levy. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Well, the paradox with Morrison is he's actually got a tax plan to flatten the system and give people in the middle income earners relief, but it doesn't kick in for another 5 years. If he made some serious savings in the budget, expenditure cuts, he could bring that plan forward and give people immediate relief. That's what they need, immediate relief, not, you know, sort of a sandwich and a milkshake at the end of the year, but significant income tax relief. So he's got the plan there. Why doesn't he do some expenditure cuts? For instance, there's an easy one there. Every year Australia pays $16 billion in welfare for non-citizens, people who aren't even Australian citizens living here and living off welfare. Well, that's an easy cut, and there's others there that could be made. So the other important change, you mentioned at the beginning there, Alan, is getting out of Paris, because you would have thought with the appointment of Angus Taylor as Energy Minister, an excellent appointment, it was time to say, look, Australia's carrying a disproportionate weight in this Paris Agreement. I've been doing a bit of research on it the last couple of days, and there's actually only 3 entities signed up to Paris that are actually committed to significant emission cuts. So the United States dropping out, it's left Canada, Australia and the European Union. And some of these other countries, India and China, for instance, are going to more than double their emissions.
Yep.
And apparently that's all right. So.
And the other question is, of course, you're talking about cutting back on money. I mean, how much are we giving to this $100 billion per year fund? I mean, this is just a transfer of wealth, this Paris thing.
Well, these international agreements only work if there's an obligation for every country to carry its weight. And when you've only got 3 entities left who are doing the right thing, Canada, Australia and the European Union, and other countries with no punishment, no sanction, it's almost an encouragement to produce more emissions, they're getting away with it. Australia's been played as a mug here. You know, we've been taken as a mug with this agreement, and it's not a very good treaty for Australia. And you would have thought with Angus Taylor coming in as Energy Minister, I don't think anyone would think Angus in his heart of hearts supports Paris. Wasn't it time for a clean break on energy policy and actually do something about security and affordability first, then worry about the emissions.
Yeah. Well, you make a lot of very valid points here. I mean, I love the point that you made about Scott Morrison, though. He's not Malcolm Turnbull, he's not Bill Shorten, he doesn't own a harbourside mansion, he doesn't walk through the outer suburbs without touching the ground for fear of contamination, so he can't be Turnbull. That's a very, very valid point. And he doesn't look like someone's hand puppet with rhetoric over-rehearsed, so he can't be Bill Shorten. And you say that basically they're good, the Conservatives are good at conserving institutions, but no experience, and this is the guts of it, and little understanding of the bare-knuckle fighting skills needed to reclaim them. I think Morrison's got a couple of these skills. He's certainly not afraid to get on the front foot, is he?
Well, he said a few things about gender fluidity, and that's welcome, but there's a bigger fight out there, Alan. You've described it as a cultural invasion. So if Australia has been invaded by cultural Marxism, surely it's the job of a Liberal Prime Minister to stand up against it. He was asked in the Fairfax media on the weekend, would he play a role in the culture wars? And Morrison said, that's not my job. He was asked, would he intervene to ensure the Ramsay Centre and its course on Western civilisation could be taught at the Australian National University? And he said, that's not my job. Well, our universities have been overrun by left-wing propaganda, and the idea that someone was going to pay them to teach Western civilisation, that's unacceptable at ANU. You've got these lunatics at Sydney University saying, oh no, we don't want Western civilisation here. The university system is in need of an urgent overhaul, and Morrison has got to take a glove to these people and get stuck in and fight these culture wars and ensure that our universities are there for the purpose of teaching Western civilisation and all the great things about our culture.
Well, you're absolutely right. And look, Bettina Wright, I mentioned this earlier, was speaking last night on the rape crisis myth. That is, and you've talked about this before, we've talked about it here, there is no risk to women at university. They aren't at the risk of rape. And she has highlighted and statistically proven that this crisis is a myth. And yet I've had letters here this morning. It was she herself wrote and said it was frightening. The security people unable to control the feral mob of protesters who were aggressively trying to push their way into the room where we were. Most of our paid audience were unable to get through the aggro crowd. Those who forced their way through were manhandled on the way through. Eventually the security called the riot squad. A huge number turned up, cleared out the protesters. I was able to give my talk, but many people were frightened by the really alarming protesters who became threatening. Now, this is at a university. Now, why wouldn't someone, a leader in Canberra, pick up the phone today and say to this Michael Spence, I need to see you urgently, and if you want to conduct your university in that way, we're not going to be giving taxpayers' money to you?
Well, this is happening just about every day, Alan. I'm speaking at Macquarie University this evening. And Antifa has put out a notice to its members. It's been sent to me by some people saying, come and yell at me because I'm a dog, close down my free speech. Now, Scott Morrison has made the point, quite legitimately, if we haven't got religious freedom in Australia, what sort of freedom have we got? Well, so too. If people can't speak freely at a university, what sort of freedom have we got? There's no difference between the university free speech issues that we've just mentioned and the religious freedom issues that Scott Morrison is addressing. Yep. So you've got to do it all, you know. You can't be part-time in the...
But we don't. But it's all very well to talk about it, Mark. We don't have it because you've got this Christian community care organisation in Queensland, the Baptist Churches Community Care Service. Now, their chief executive, John Campbell, sent an email to staff on September 29 last year headed, Marriage Equality or the Destruction of Meaningful Difference. It made out a courteous, detailed no case for the gay marriage debate. And we had CEOs all over the country saying yes. They were arguing the yes case, that was okay, but this CEO, Mr Campbell, encouraged his staff to vote no, but stressed it was important for both sides to be respectful of each other. Every chief executive was advocating gay marriage, very prominently campaigned for the yes vote, and now a 25-year-old gay child and family therapist has complained that Mr Campbell's email was an abuse of power, it was hateful, it was offensive, it was an overt obscenity, it left her feeling victimised and ashamed, and this charity outfit, a community care organisation, is now before the Queensland Industrial Relations Commission. Now, isn't this what government is for, to simply say, this rubbish won't go on in the country I lead?
Well, exactly, and the problem we've got with the discrimination laws is that they work one way for a certain group of so-called minorities, and other people who get vilified are left exposed and apparently are fair game. If you're a white person, if you're a male, if you're a Christian in this country, the discrimination laws give you zero protection. Zero protection from losing your job because of your opinion, from public vilification, from the sort of treatment that's also been meted out to Israel Folau and Margaret Court. So we've got to change these laws. We've got to abolish the Human Rights Commission, because that's all one-way traffic, and create a new human rights apparatus in Australia, Alan, that protects everyone, ensures that we have a society based on merit, a fair go and fair treatment of people. It doesn't matter your religion or your skin colour or your gender. If you're being vilified and discriminated against, losing your job because of your public opinions, then your free speech must be protected. So we've got to overhaul, this is another job for Scott Morrison, overhaul the entire human rights system to ensure fair play across the community instead of just protection for a certain group of selected minorities.
Well, I mean, just wrapping that up, and you and I could talk forever about this, and the public love the fact that at least you're getting into the ring here. But to put it simply, someone's got to, in a position of leadership, defend the virtues of Western civilisation. We've got this girl standing up at a primary school, 9 years of age in Queensland today, defying the school. She won't stand for the national anthem because she doesn't believe we're free, and the school is saying, oh, well, if she wants to go outside the room while the anthem's being played and so on. I mean, what on earth do you do in circumstances like this other than call the parents in and say, listen, these are the rules here. If you don't like the rules, go somewhere else, but we're not changing the rules to accommodate you?
Yes, well, you've got to enforce the rules in schools. We used to have special schools for children with behavioural problems. Well, I'm afraid not standing for the national anthem and not following the school rules is a behavioural problem.
Yeah.
So kick her out.
9.
Kick her out.
9. She says when it says we're young, it completely ignores the fact that Indigenous culture was here for over 50,000 years before colonisation. Yes, and colonisation brought the kind of tremendous wealth that all Australians now enjoy. All right, Mark, look.
The school only exists because of colonisation.
That's
What sort of fools are these?
What sort of fools are these? Good on you, Mark.
Okay, thanks.
Talk next week.
Please consider subscribing to my channel if you think there's anything there of use to you or entertainment or whatever. And either do that or give me a thumbs up, or if you're feeling really energetic, do both. That'd be great. But please don't ignore me. That's the worst thing you can do on YouTube, is be ignored.